If y'all saw our previous video where we went to Gas Monkey Garage and we picked up the Slosh Tubz for the front of old Mac.
They're a fiberglass inner fender for your C10, gives you a lot more clearance, and they are slicked up and smooth and are gonna make your engine compartment look amazing. We're gonna take these Slosh Tubz and we're gonna put them in this truck right here.
It's gonna make a huge difference on the way old Mac looks because we're gonna be painting everything the same colors as we did the firewall. So it's gonna be the almond color at the bottom of this truck is, and it's going to be the gold flake the heavy gold flake that Jimmy Frazier from Killian's Collision painted on there, and it's going to look amazing. We're probably even going to do the hood as well.
Y'all come along and we're going to show you how this goes. I'm going to start taking stuff apart. So now that you've got your truck disassembled, you're gonna take this template that Slosh Tubz sends along with you, and I'm gonna get my good buddy Chase here to help me. We're gonna mark these fenders.
All right, so we got a line drawn. It's kind of tight in here, but you can see the line is drawn. That's what we're gonna cut out, right?
Yeah. All right. So if you look at this picture right here on the template that they sent, you can see where the bottom line is going to be that you cut, and I'm going to show you as I mark it because sometimes pictures can be confusing, but check this out and I'll show you under here where I mark. I found it easier to put a piece of tape on here and make your mark off that. That gives me my line all the way across there, and I could make my mark based on that tape. Now that we have everything covered up, our firewall is already painted and our engine is already in. So I covered up and taped up as much as possible because we're going to be using a cutoff wheel on a die grinder and a cutoff wheel on an electric grinder. They're going to throw a lot of sparks. You want to make sure you cover up your glass, cover up your paint, cover up your engine. So now I'm going to cut these fenders out and move on to the next step.
Right. Boom, got it out.
Now we got this trimmed out for the first time. I fully expect to have to trim it more. I just think I'm going to have to. But we're gonna do our first test fit and see how this goes in there. There's a lot of things that might be in the way on this truck that might not be on your truck because we got turbo crap everywhere, lines and braces, and so it's gonna be interesting to see how it goes. But I'm gonna do my first test fit, y'all check it out.
You already got that sucker installed, dude.
It's pretty good. Like I was just saying that I was fully intended on having to trim. I'm gonna have to trim, but not near as much as I thought. I mean, this thing, based on the template, it went in pretty straightforward first try out of the gate.
So what is your next step?
I'm gonna keep trimming and get them fit tight. I'm gonna get both of them fit and bolted in, and then we'll probably set the truck back down so I'm not bent over so far, and then I'll work on the side panels.
Cool.
So what I'm using here is my little Craftsman angle grinder, and I've got a flapper wheel. This is a 60 grit flapper wheel, Harbor Freight. It's just a Hercules flapper wheel. And for me, like when I'm really trying to fine tune sheet metal, I like to use this to clean those edges up and take off a little material at a time. It's a smoother, and it that throws bad of sparks as like 36 grit or a rock. And then I'll come back in with the belt sander and just clean all the edges up. But while we're just fitting, we're gonna get it roughed in with this flapper disc right here.
All right.
That second fit up, that was it, man. I actually cut a little bit too much on this back side, which in our case is gonna be okay because we have the fillers for the sides. But if you're doing this without the fillers, you probably need to put the template on there and use it kind of as a guide and trim to fit. Take a little less and a little less at a time. Let me show you what I'm talking about back here at the back side. If you look right here, it's a nice little gap all the way across there. But then back there in the back, I got high. I just allowed that to deceive me a little bit on how high the hump was back there and just got a little overzealous on my cutting. But This one's fit, so my next step is gonna be to mark my holes. These fenders do have some little marks on them already, like Slosh Tubz put them on there to say, hey, this is where the holes need to be. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. There's one, there's one, there's one, and they've got them all the way around. The only one I don't see is there's one that goes around in this area, and I don't see that one. It goes on the back, on the cab side, look underneath here. That one right there, that's the only one I don't see. I don't know how necessary it is. I will kind of use that, I'll judge that off of how sturdy this actually feels when I bolt all these other ones up. So I'm gonna drill these holes out and we're gonna see how close they are. I've got the tub back in there. Only a couple of the holes lined up directly, but they're all pretty close. So my next step here is just to kind of figure out where my holes need to be, take my die grinder and just slot these a little bit. We should be ready to go. So I've got bolts and clips, put the fender tubs in with instead of trying to use the old rusty ones. It's just gonna make your life easier and it's a cleaner product. So let's get to work. I pulled it out this time so I could go ahead and get all my new cage nuts installed. That way I can get all my bolts in at one time instead of sliding holes now. It just makes more sense. So I got all those put in. So we're gonna go back in with the fender again. All right, this is a carbide tip for your die grinder. This is just an old wore out, cheapo die grinder, but this is a carbide tip for that. And what I'm doing here is I'm just using this to slot these holes ever so slightly. That lets me get the bolt right in there. It really is not that far off as far as where the holes were marked on the bender from Slosh Tubz and where they need to be. It is not far. I'm using these metric bolts. See that? This is a body bolt that would be on more modern cars. I went and got it from Killian's Collision. That's where I got the cage nuts also. But that head on that washer, it covers up any of the slotting I'm doing, and it's not bad. So check this out. Let me show you how I'm gonna do this. And there we go. That hole fits. You can look inside there and see it fits good. Put my little bolt in there. Give it a little tighten. That was not as hard as I expected it to be. They went in really easy. The Slosh Tubz products are working out great. This is our second product from them. We also have their firewall filler that's set up for vintage air. We're gonna be installing their side panels, which will smooth up this intersection of the fender here, make it nice and slick, and we'll come back after all this is done and paint to match everything. So our firewall, our fender wells, our side panels, they all are uniform in color. It's gonna make this engine compartment look killer. So our first step is test fitting this one. Right out of the gate, you can see a couple things. You can see this gap back here is a little off from the gap down here. We've got a gap here along our fender well. So the objective is to make this fit as tight as we can here and here in the visuals. That'll give it the cleanest look that we could have. What I'm gonna be doing in the beginning of this process is just a lot of in and out, a lot of shaving some edges, marking here to try to get this all to flow together, get the contour all the same. And then we're gonna make these bolt in just like we did with our firewall filler here. You could weld these parts in too. That's gonna add more body work to the job and a lot more time, and we're gonna carry on with the theme of bolting these in. I think it's gonna look nice, so let's get going. You can see here, I got this little corner marked. This is the front by the core support. I know I need to trim that little section, so I'm gonna trim that first, and in and out, and in and out, and just keep marking spots and trimming until I get it fit like I need to. The worst thing for me is really the in and out because our firewall's already painted, so we gotta be super careful not to scratch that up, but let's get to grinding. We did just a little bit. I don't wanna go too far. I'd rather do it a bunch of times than have to figure out some way to make a mess up look good. So that grind actually was a pretty good one. It fits pretty nicely. Consulted with Chase over here, asked him a few questions about what he thinks on mounting this, because this really is a weld-in piece. We just don't want to weld it on, we want to bolt it on. There's some things we could do differently, and we just had a little conversation. He likes where we're going, I like where we're going. So you can see here, we're gonna have a nice uniform gap in between this fender well and this panel right here. Still a little rough, but what I'm gonna do is I'll get this piece bolted on first, and that'll let me have it fixed in position so I can do my final mark and get that opening and that gap as uniform as possible. I got my surgical table of bolts, nuts, and thread setters and tools and everything ready to rock and roll. So we're gonna get these panels off and install the bolts that we can. The ones we need to make brackets for, we'll do when we pull our tubs out so we can reach them a little better. So let's get to drilling some holes and set some crush nuts. So now my next step, I'm gonna get these slosh tubs out. So I'm gonna raise this truck up in the air, put the jacks under it, get the wheels off, pull the slosh tubs, and I need to make a couple of brackets for my side panels so they can be bolting on all the way around. I drilled some holes here. You can see there's a couple spots on these fenders where they kind of have a dip in behind that side panel, so there's nothing to mount to. So I'm just gonna make some little brackets that I can put a thread setter on and be able to bolt these all the way in. Then I need to go talk to Killian's Collision and see when can you guys get this in there and get me some paint on it. Something I forgot to do that I'm gonna do right now before I pull these tubs out. Let me see if I can even show you. If you look up in here, this is the back side of the tubs, right there and right there. That is 2 more bolt locations that GM used on their inner fenders. Now, Slosh Tubz didn't have these marked. I don't know how necessary they are, but it's gonna be pretty easy to access the backside. I'm just gonna reach in there with this little hook, give them a scribe to see where they're at, just try to scratch through the gel coat as best I can. That way when I pull them out, I can drill those out and have 2 more bolts in those inner fenders just to cut down on any vibration or movement or anything like that. All right, I hit my elbow. I'm gonna reach up in here, get inside this hole with this. And I'm just scratching a circle using that threaded section as a guide. Let's see if I can get to this one. This one looks a little tougher. Oh, I need something a little shorter to get in that one. Hold on, I'll be right back. I grabbed 2 different smaller picks. You can see those. Let's see if we can get in there with one of them. In the hole, bro. Maybe not. Maybe you. Oh, it'll go in the hole, but it ain't long enough.
That's what she said.
I don't know how I'm gonna get that one. I gotta figure that out. This is the one I tried at first. It was a little long, but I had this one that's a little shorter. Got in there with that. Got both sides marked up. Let's get them out now. I was gonna show you, now that I have this fender tub out, what I was talking about with the bolts earlier where they mount. I'll show you these locations. So if you look right there, like there's the outside of the fender, here's that first one I was trying to scribe, and then right here is the second one, right next to the frame rail. Those are the 2 places where I scratched them. And they're gonna be a bigger bolt than what I have in the rest of it because they just are. That's what they were from the factory. We got a lot of room for a big washer, so I can kind of oversize my hole a little bit. It would be a real good guide. I'm not gonna test fit them again. It should be good. Famous last words, but yes, that's it on that. If you'll look right up here, this is what I was talking about. Here's my inner panel, the side panel inside the truck, and look at all this open space right here. Well, I have a bolt hole right there, and I need to mount this, and there's nothing here, but I know that all of this is clear of being interfered with by the fender tub, so I'm gonna make me a little sheet metal bracket of some sort, doodad thing there, and there. And then way up top up there, I want to try to get a bolt up there because that's the only free swinging spot. So right here is where I need to make me a little bracket. I've got our little window sticker from C2 Nationals here. I'm going to use it as a template. So now that we've got our pieces transferred onto cardboard, brought them over here to the table, we're going to turn them into metal pieces. We're going to transfer these cardboard templates onto this sheet metal, get them cut out, get them shaped, test fit them, and then we're going to do something to strengthen them up. I apologize. Yesterday, my cameras, the phone, the camera, everything was cutting off on me because it was so hot. So I didn't get to finish showing you what I was doing. All right, first one, you can see right there. Then we come down to the next one. And then if you look way up there, you can see that one that goes up there. Now that weld looks terrible. But once I get this piece off of there, I'll be able to access that a little better and I can make it look a lot better. Next time on the Journey HQ. I need the lift so I can put old Mac on the lift to start working on the exhaust. I love it.
You go ahead. No, I'm gonna let you do it.
No.